Hi, boys and girls. We are ready to read chapter 5 of our Flat Stanley book. This is the end of our story, and this is an AR book. So if you've listened to all 5 chapters, it's been a short book. Please make sure to take your AR test on it, and I will check them if you want me to let you know what you get on it. But this is the very end of our book. Remember at the end of last chapter, Stanley had just helped capture the paintings thief. So let's see what happens today. Chapter 5 is called Arthur's Good Idea. For a while, Stanley Lambchop was a famous name. Everywhere that Stanley went, people stared and pointed at him. He could hear them whisper, "Over there, Agnes, over there. That must be Stanley Lambchop, the one who caught the snake thieves." And things like that were said all the time. But after a few weeks of whispering, it finally stopped. The staring stopped too. People had other things to think about. Stanley did not mind. Being famous had been fun, but enough was enough. And then came a further change, and it was not a pleasant one. People began to laugh and make fun of him as he passed by. "Hello, super skinny," they would shout, and even ruder things about the way he looked. Stanley told his parents how he felt. "It's the other kids I mostly mind," he said. "They don't like me anymore because I'm different. I'm flat." "Shame on them," said Mrs. Lambchop. "It is wrong to dislike people for their shapes, or their religion for that matter, or the color of their skin." "I know," Stanley said. "Only maybe it's impossible for everybody to like everybody." "Perhaps," said Mrs. Lambchop, "but they sure can try." Later that night, Arthur Lambchop was awoken by the sound of crying. In the darkness, he crept across the room and he knelt next to Stanley's bed. "Are you okay?" he whispered. "Go away," Stanley said. "Don't be mad at me," Arthur said. "You're still mad because I let you get tangled the day you were my kite, I guess." "Skip it, will you?" Stanley said. "I'm not mad. Go away." "Please, let's be friends." Arthur couldn't help but start crying a little too. "Oh, Stanley," he said, "please tell me what's wrong." Stanley waited for a long time before he spoke. Then finally he said, The, the, the thing is, I'm just not happy anymore. I'm tired of being flat. I want to be a regular shape again, like other people. But I'll have to go on being flat forever. It makes me sick." "Oh, Stanley," Arthur said. He dried his tears on a corner of Stanley's sheet and could think of nothing more to say. "Don't talk about what I just said," Stanley told him. "I don't want Mom and Dad to worry. That would only make things worse." "You're brave," Arthur said. "You're really brave, Stanley." He took a hold of Stanley's hand. The two brothers sat together in the darkness for a long time, just being friends. They were both still sad, but each one felt a little better than he had before. And then, suddenly, though he was not even trying to think, Arthur had an idea. He jumped up and he turned on the light and he ran to the big storage box where the toys and things were kept. He began to rummage in the box. Stanley sat up in bed to watch. Arthur flung a football aside and some lead soldiers and airplane models and lots of wooden blocks and other toys. And finally he said, "Ha!" He had found what he wanted. An old bicycle pump. He held it up, and Stanley and him looked at each other. "Okay, Stanley," he said. "Take it easy. But here you go." He put the end of the long pump hose in his mouth, and he clamped his lips tightly around it so that no air could escape. I'll go slowly, Arthur said. If it hurts or anything, just wiggle your hand and I'll stop. He began to pump. At first, nothing happened except that Stanley's cheeks bulged a little bit. Arthur watched his hand, but there was no wiggle signal, so he pumped on. Then, suddenly, Stanley's top half began to swell. It's working, shouted Arthur, pumping away. Stanley spread his arms so that the air could get inside of him more easily. He got bigger and bigger. The buttons of his pajama top bust off. Pop, pop, pop. A moment more and he was all rounded up. His head and body and arms and legs. But not his right foot. That foot stayed flat. Arthur stopped pumping. It's like trying to do the very last bit of those long balloons, he said. Maybe a shake would help. Stanley shook his right foot twice, and with a little whooshing sound, it swelled out to match the left one. There stood Stanley Lambchop, as he used to be, as if he had never been flat at all. Thank you, Arthur, Stanley said. Thank you very much. The brothers were shaking hands when Mr. Lambchop came into the room with Mrs. Lambchop right behind him. We've heard you two. What are you doing up and talking when you should be asleep, hey? Shame on... George, said Mrs. Lambchop. Stanley's round again. There he is, all puffed up. You're right, said Mr. Lambchop. Good for you, Stanley. I'm the one who did it, Arthur said. I blew him up. Everyone was terribly excited and happy, of course. Mrs. Lambchop made hot chocolate to celebrate the occasion, and they drank the hot chocolate in toast to Arthur for his cleverness. Goodness, I lost my spot there. When the little party was over, Mr. and Mrs. Lambchop tucked the boys back into their bed and kissed them good night. As they turned out the lights, Stanley rolled over. Good night, said Stanley to Arthur. It had been a long and tiring day. Very soon, all of the Lambchops were asleep. So, Stanley ended up being back to normal. He ended up being back to normal. His big brother, even though he wasn't happy with him, and even though he had been disappointed in him, and he had been mad at him, in the end, it was his big brother that helped him. He saved the day. He made him back normal again. So, I want you to remember that the next time you're upset with someone, they may the next time be able to fix the problem, be able to fix the solution. I hope that you have gotten your flat farthings by now. And I shared a couple pictures that I was sent yesterday. If you have got your flat farthing, I cannot wait to see what adventures you'll go on. He got to catch a museum thief. He got to be a kite. He got to go to California. I hope that I get to go on some cool adventures too. All right, I hope you enjoyed that. I will put the number for the AR book underneath the video so you can take your AR test on it. Okay? Bye-bye. Have a great weekend, boys and girls. Happy Friday. If you still have not done your show and tell video, I would love for you to send me a show and tell video. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.